Fort Ticonderoga was not always the mighty sentinel we see today towering over Lake Champlain. During its heydays, it played host to hundreds of French, colonial American, and red-coated British soldiers, all battling over the young nation. But following General Burgoyne's defeat at Saratoga, the British abandoned it, along with most of North America, in 1781, much to the delight of local residents living here. They began stripping the fort of any useful building materials for their use. The act left only a bony framework of the original star-shaped stronghold. They quickly used the stones to repair old homes or build new ones. It was just a few decades later that William Ferris Pell purchased what was left of the fort in 1820 from Union College and Columbia University. With train service bringing vacationers headed north, the Pells decided to rebuild the crumbling structure in 1909 as a historic museum. They had the original plans for the task.
We found this document in a trunk in a storage facility, and evidently animals had gotten to it, raccoons. In some cases you can see the marks from their claws along the pages. Torn the thing to pieces. I'm sure living up here we all deal with wildlife in one form or another. But we were faced with looking at the object, what was left of it, and seeing that there was text on there that was important, and so wanting to reconstruct that in some way so we could see what the document was. And in the process, realized that the document was in fact an important ledger from the very early years of the museum's existence here.
Now, if all the king's horses, all the king's men, couldn't put you-know-who back together again, how was this massive puzzle to be solved? Frank SCHLAMP, a 25-year volunteer at the fort, didn't blink an eye at taking on the mission. His only reply was,
"Oh boy."
The former Department of Environmental Conservation officer knew he had a massive jigsaw puzzle on his hands, knowing that this was one that was never meant to be solved. So why even bother?
It's our duty as a museum to recover lost information. And we identified this as an early source from the fort's history. And although a lot of our museum collection focuses on the 18th century, the period that the fort was operational, there's a great deal of history that came after that around the Pell family, the historic site, the development of the reconstruction in the museum here. And this clearly had information about that. And so when it is completed, when the pages are once more intact, they will help to fill out that story of what it was like here in the early 20th century as the fort was being reconstructed. But as this was simultaneously the summer residence for the Pell family, there were functioning farm estates. There are many agricultural entries in this ledger book. So it can tell us a lot more information about the kind of place this was in the early 1900s.
After a year of squinting at the minute fragments, SCHLAMP sees progress.
This is one of the pages from the ledger.
Photocopy.
And this is a photocopy of one of the completed pages, which we will be able to use in a loose leaf type setting for research. That way they don't have to go touch part of the original paper.
It shows this was a real farm, raising sheep, cattle, goats, and horses. There's information about the first car the Pells owned and the electrification of the Pell home with original builds. After a year's work, the journal is becoming a witness of time, revealing the craftsmen and suppliers in this historic area. When completed, the journal will be available for researchers. SCHLAMP said that perhaps, another year of strained eyes, he'll put the last piece of the mystery in place. For Mountain Lake Journal, I'm Jack LADUKE in Ticonderoga.